One of the main critiques I hear now constituency work.
Yeah. Even the last time there was a few things diplomatic. Yeah, I didn't get it.
So 7:30 or 10 o'clock? What's the preference?
Like 8:30 or 9? Neither. I would just reserve more of my day.
There's the Miami County one.
Yeah, is that next week?
It is next week.
I have to run over to the gun show. I didn't know there was a gun show.
If it's not that, there's everything else. They're Kennedy. Without him.
I was fine until then.
That was a question I had. What if we just?
They wreak havoc on the native birds. I mean, come on.
Except for like folks in Wichita were saying
Oh, that could be true. There you go. Introduce more snakes. See, we can fix this. We definitely don't have yeah. Back in before our time, if they did a whole completed
Okay, good morning. We're going to get started in just a moment, if everybody could. Get your coffee, get your donuts. Good morning. I'm Ashley Vick. I'm your moderator today, and I'm a program coordinator here at the library. I just want to take a moment and thank all of you for taking time out of your Saturday. I know sometimes there's more appealing things on a Saturday drawing us, so thank you, and especially a thank you to our elected officials for taking time out of their Saturday on their day off to be here. We appreciate you for doing that. And so just before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things. There are note cards on your chairs. That's how you can ask a question. If you wouldn't mind making sure that you're writing legibly, that really helps me out asking your questions. Also, writing your question in the form of a question helps me out as well. And then if you wouldn't mind, also one question per note card. I have probably 2,000 note cards, so we're not going to run out of note cards, just one per note card. That helps me keep track of what I've already asked and what hasn't been asked. And then before we get started, also, I like to ask if you would please refrain from clapping, shouting out, and then definitely no booing. I'm sure nobody here would dare, but just want to call that out. That helps us keep things moving along and keep things feeling civil and keep the conversation moving. So, before we get started, I do want to share that a recent public opinion poll found over 70% of Americans believe we have a civility problem, and that we are part of the solution for that as well. So I would like this event to be an example of that, part of the solution to the civility problem. So, and with that, we're going to have each legislator share for 3 minutes what's going on. This is their time to share what you want, so what you think is important, and then after that, we'll open with questions. So we're going to start 3 minutes with you.
So I'm Representative Courtney Sappington. I represent Kansas House District 5. So as far as maybe Johnson County or Gardner goes, I've got Edgerton, and then very far south, just a little bit of Gardner, and then as it heads, district heads east to Miami County. So I actually live in Baldwin City, so in Douglas County, and I took over as a midterm appointment from my predecessor. So I've only been in office, was sworn in October. This is my first legislative session. I just due to the nature of when I came in, I don't necessarily have any bills that I have sponsored, but there is one that we passed through the House this week I'm super excited about, HB 2602. This provides legal framework for portable benefits for independent contractors. For me, being a mom that's been at home with my kids for the past 5 years, that's kind of how I have been participating in the workforce as a 1099 contractor. I've had 2 to 3 different part-time roles and working for small businesses in my community. And so what this bill does is allows independent contractors, 1099s, to collect portable, to have a portable benefit plan that their contractee can pay into, whether that's medical savings, retirement, paid time off. So it's great in that multiple entities can contribute in, and it moves with the contractor. So that's all I've got.
Good morning, everybody. I'm State Senator Doug Shane, represent Kansas's 37th Senate District, which covers around Lewisburg, where I live, the northern tier of Miami County, and then also covers Gardner, Edgerton, and Southwest Olathe. So the Senate District actually goes up to 119th Street around K7. This is my second session. I was elected in 2024, and it's been a real honor to serve in the Kansas legislature. You know, it's interesting to hear the comments about civility. I would say 70% say we have civic issues, and at least 70% contribute to those civic issues, it seems. But in the Kansas Senate, it's actually been really, really refreshing because colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we actually do a pretty phenomenal job of working together and collaborating, although we, of course, have very, very different views on a lot of issues, which I'm sure we're going to talk about some today. This session, some of you are going to be aware that I've put a lot of focus and effort into trying to work on bills looking at landlord-tenant law in response to the Aspen Place apartment tragedy that happened here in Gardner in 2025. Happy to say that one of my bills, Senate Bill 415, did get worked out of the Judiciary Committee, and it was blessed by the Senate President, so we have the opportunity to keep working on that bill, trying to get it done. That bill would narrowly apply the Kansas Consumer Protection Act to the Kansas Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. especially when there's a condemnation like happened with the Aspen Place apartment. So something to keep negligent landlords accountable in Kansas. I think it's going to be important. I think it's a really good bill. Also introduced bills on education, bills on domestic violence, and other subject areas. There's been a lot of things happening. Of course, this week was turnaround in the legislature. So the Senate, we passed 50 bills this week. The House passed over 120, I think. Yeah. So there's a lot of things moving and shaking. Stuff you see in the headlines is not necessarily reflective of everything happening in the State House. So really look forward to sharing with you a lot of those things today.
Good morning. Yes, it is still morning. Sorry, I was over at the Spring Hill Legislative Coffee this morning. I was a few minutes late, so I did try to be on time for this one. I'm Lauren Bohi. I represent House District 15, which is Southwest Olathe, and it also goes down to a Spring Hill Township because the southernmost part of my district is 183rd and 169 on the west side of 169. I sit on financial institutions and pensions, energy, utility, telecom, commerce, labor, economic development. I was moved to that from transportation this fall, and then I also sit on judiciary. Some of the bills that I had the privilege of carrying on the floor in these past couple of days were one of them was pretty contentious. I carried HB 2366 to expand the scope of practice right for naturopaths to be able to prescribe within their educational setting. They learn how to do that, and they are licensed in multiple states to practice to the full extent of their scope. And that did not make it past the House floor. That was kind of a hard thing that happened this week. But I also carried HB 2357, which has decriminalized in our animal cruelty law the ability to do the trap and release and vaccinate of feral cats. So I got that above the line, and we passed it out of the House. So we'll see if the Senate takes it up. I also carried Trey's Law, which is HB 2688. And Trey's Law is a law that says, you know what? Child sex abuse victims should not be held to NDAs. If they want to talk about what happened to them, they should be able to talk about what happened to them. And so, again, it will be up to the Senate to take it up, but I thought that was a pretty important piece of legislation. Okay, sorry, I see my 1 minute mark. And there are some other things that I don't think it got blessed on the House side. I do think it got blessed on the Senate side. There is a program at the federal level to have more access to free school lunch and school breakfast. And I believe Senator Adam Thomas introduced it on the Senate side, and I introduced it on the House side. Well, several of my colleagues and I, Representative Essex, Representative Steens, myself, and I believe Representative Laura Williams introduced that. And we had a hearing on the House side this past, oh my goodness, it was a week ago Thursday. And so anyway, I am up there trying to do good things for Kansas, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry. What was the bill number on the school lunch?
Oh my, I will have to get that back to you. I apologize, but it was heard in health, and Representative Essex is the lead on that. But if you go and look at my page, it'll be on there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if just a reminder, if we could avoid shouting out, they'll be here at the end, and we can double check all those things or look it up for you. It just helps things move along.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. What is the status of the ICE immunity bill?
Yeah, so I believe it is sitting in the Senate. I'm not sure if the Senate Fed and State Affairs Committee has heard that bill at this point in time. I'm getting a head nod that maybe they have. It was not among the bills that we debated and voted in the Senate. I would anticipate that becomes a bill that we debate in the Senate chamber. Timeline-wise, I'm not exactly sure what that would be, but bills that sit in exempt committees or bills that are blessed, I would anticipate that many of those will be debated within the next 2 weeks.
And we do have another question around ICE. How can the state ensure that ICE officers don't monitor or go onto school grounds?
So generally speaking, we cooperate with federal law enforcement doing what federal law enforcement is tasked to do through federal law. So I don't necessarily know or believe that the state would have really any authority to try to restrict federal government from exercising their responsibilities as law enforcement officers, in this case, to enforce federal immigration law. We know that this has, of course, been a contentious issue. I know that there were concerns from folks that are actually in my Senate district in Southwest Olathe around ICE activities. And I think what I would say, my philosophy is that the most important thing is, one, to actually have a healthy dialogue on the issue. We've obviously seen events of concern from twofold. One, interference with law enforcement, which is a problem. But then we also saw tragedy that happened as a result to a reaction to that interference. And I think one of the best things that we can do is to have a healthy dialogue, cooperate, and when we find that there's an issue, seek to remedy what that issue is and try to get a solution, right? And that's going to be one of the most important things for us to do moving forward.
To Senator Shane's point, I'm not sure that we have any legislation currently regarding ICE and school property. I don't know of it. So if we do have it, I don't know of it, and I would love for you to bring that to my attention. Thank you.
And then we have a star bonds question. Canyon Research did the economic analysis for the Chiefs star bonds. They also did the analysis for several other star bonds. Their predictions have been consistently inaccurate, sometimes spectacularly wrong. Why do we keep using them?
I don't get to choose who does that. And I wasn't there when the original proposal came up. That it's my understanding that the original, actually none of us were there during the original proposal. It's my understanding that it was not just the House that wanted the star bonds or the Senate that wanted the star bonds, but the governor also wanted the star bonds for this project to help with economic development in the state of Kansas. I do believe there are other models out there, not just the Canyon Research ones, regarding this project, but I would have to go back and get them. I do get to sit on Commerce, and we've had some more discussions regarding star bonds and where and how to facilitate that program. And so just know that we are still debating it up at the State House.
So I actually voted against the star bond renewal and expansion bill last year. I think that star bonds, among a lot of our other economic incentive tools that we have in Kansas, have widely been abused and not used in a way that I think is consistent with their intent. When we think about star bonds, it's supposed to be for projects that drive tourism, right? And there's a number of projects around the state that I think that it could legitimately be questioned if that's really a tourism interest. And it becomes really challenging to measure economic lift. Star bonds are a tool in the toolbox. I think that used in a limited fashion and used appropriately can potentially be a good tool. There could be debate. Certainly, a lot of this. I'm sure a lot of this stems from the Chiefs conversation. I would argue that could be a legitimate tourism interest, right? To have an NFL team within the state, but we do know that there's some gaps. The economic modeling and trying to determine if there's a net positive lift for the state and for the locals that are involved in those projects is always an ongoing conversation. But they're a tool in the toolbox when used in the appropriate way. I think can provide some value.
Since I didn't use my full 2 minutes, can I use it? Can I do a follow-up really fast? Okay. Just to speak to some of the other star bonds in the state, one of the projects, I'm a freshman legislator in case that isn't very abundantly clear. The freshman caucus has gone kind of all over the state of Kansas this past year, and one of the projects that we got to see was actually the Star Bonds project that helps attract youth tourism or youth sports tourism out in Garden City. And they had a star bond and they paid it off early. And so then they went and they asked for another star bond because they have some awesome programs. So star bonds can be done appropriately and correctly. And I'm not saying all of them are, and I am not saying that they need to not have like the proper look through type of thing. But at the same time, I do think it's going to have a huge impact on the economic development in Garden City. Thank you.
What pro-life legislation will be passed this year, and how can we ensure the courts don't overturn it?
I believe we did just pass out 3 bills from the House. It was on
One of them related to
Wednesday night. No, Wednesday night?
It was Wednesday night.
Okay, sorry.
Late. One of them related to, I guess, what is it, the material or the literature that's shared? One of them addressed potential litigation with not being properly informed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one.
I will have to get that back to you. We did pass out 3 pro woman pieces of legislation on Wednesday night from the House. Again, one was, like Representative Sappington said, regarding the information. There was a piece regarding kind of tort and being able to go back if there was harm done during an operation, that they would have an easier way to
Not properly informed of some of the risks
Yes.
that come with an abortion.
I didn't bring my page of all of the legislation, so I apologize, guys.
Okay. What would you say about Gardner being the first municipality and the county being the first one? Sorry, Okay. What would you say about Gardner being the first municipality in the county to make camping and homelessness illegal this week, especially in light of what happened at Aspen Place last year? Should this be a local decision or state law? Solutions to helping the growing homeless population in the area when there are no shelters.
So I'll go ahead and tackle that, I guess. So that's a little bit news to me if that happened in Gardner City Council this week. I think that addressing homelessness is, if this was easy, we would have solved this problem already, right? It is a real significant challenge. We know that there is bed space and shelter challenges, not just in Johnson County, but this is an issue that's around the country as well. And we need to have, I think, 2 things. One, you don't want to have a situation where your streets become, full of folks that are unfortunately homeless, right? But it also, you get into a dangerous situation sometimes where somebody can't get out of that kind of vicious cycle that they might be in, because there's everything from mental health issues to even just temporary transient issues that result in somebody becoming homeless. So, the big thing is that we also have tools in place to help try to get people out of that cycle of homelessness, try to get them back up on their feet, try to get them rehoused. Obviously, with Aspen, we saw how in an instant you can have almost 700 people that are at risk of becoming homeless. So it is a delicate balance. I'll have to, I guess, look to see exactly what the city of Gardner did. But there's a lot of ongoing challenges as we seek to try to get people back up on their feet.
So I'll say that our Kansas Constitution affirms home rule, and that is something that we in the legislature take very seriously. I sit on the local government committee. We had a bill this year, 2495, to address a homelessness issue out in Garden City. They've got an issue where a riverbed that has been dried up for 10 years now has turned into a homeless encampment. And the fact that it is technically legally defined as one of the navigable rivers in the state means it is Kansas state property, and the local authorities feel like they don't have the discretion and jurisdiction to go in and address that problem. So the bill that was brought forward would give local authorities the ability to address that issue in their community, and the committee did not pass it through. So I would say that we take very seriously the fact that it is not our place to impede on home rule in those issues.
How do you plan to bring more renewable energy jobs to Kansas so we can take advantage of the growing industry, protect our grid, I think is what this is saying, and compete with China?
I'll start, or maybe just me. So I do sit on the Energy Committee in the House side, and one of the things that I think is very important is having a reliable all-of-the-above approach, and renewables are a big aspect of the energy in the state of Kansas. We definitely have wind, and we have solar, and we have nuclear, and those things are really good things. With wind, it's not always windy. With sun, isn't always shining. So we do need an all of the above approach that I think is measured. And I believe that's why Evergy is bringing on 2 natural gas plants. They're trying to bring on a big solar area, but that it's having a little bit of problems right now. So I think that as far as energy infrastructure, one of the things that I'm very encouraged by is down in southeast Kansas at the Great Plains Industrial Park, there is a test project with, Deep Fission and the U.S. Department of Energy regarding a new kind of nuclear reactor. And I just think that with the amount of energy that we're going to need, we're not having less energy needs in the state of Kansas. We're having more. Currently, we export about 22% of our energy. And I want to make sure that we can continue to be energy exporters. That being said, we are not looking to dissuade renewable energy jobs at the state of Kansas. We are looking to continue to grow the energy infrastructure in the state of Kansas. So.
For me, I personally say nuclear. It's one of the cleanest, it's one of the safest, and one of the most efficient energy sources that we have. Interestingly enough, when I was in undergrad at K-State in our expository writing class, we had to write a paper on renewables, and I wanted to write it on nuclear energy. At the time, this was before the United Kingdom decommissioned a lot of their nuclear power plants, but I believe it was around 70 to 80% of their grid came from nuclear energy at the time, and they had 16 nuclear facilities in the United Kingdom. And these were older facilities, right? So not the new modern ones. And at the time, the amount of nuclear waste from those facilities over 50 years would fit into the foundation of one wind turbine. And so when we think about effect, nuclear really is a great opportunity. I think at the state level and at the federal level, there's a lot of initiatives in this. When it comes to wind and solar, I'm not a no to wind and solar guy, but I also believe that they are now mature industries and they need to be able to survive without subsidies. Of course, hot topic right now in Gardner is on the data centers, right? And data centers and large manufacturing operations obviously come with a lot of power requirements. We don't want to be a no to data center state, but we also need to do it in a way that makes sense. I think some of those conversations are on these really large projects that have a lot of need from an energy basis, that maybe we talk about trying to get them to participate in either their own energy creation or contributing to the grid somehow, because we really don't want it to be borne on the backs of all of you guys as ratepayers in your homes and on small businesses as well. So I think that's certainly how I look at trying to tackle the energy issue. We know that it's going to be an issue, and it's also water when we're thinking about resources of energy and water, and a lot of that goes hand in hand.
Many individuals and families are suffering as they are on the wait list for CAN care services. Lives are in danger. Families are locked into poverty to be allowed services. How can you address this life-threatening issue?
Well, I think this is Representative Sappington's committee, but I'll start really fast. So I think that last year we made some great strides. Clearly the problem's not solved, but we did make great strides in helping get more off of the wait list. And I have the deepest respect for Representative Beeler, who's the chairman of the Social Services Budget, really working hard to make sure that we continue to care for the Kansans that need it the most. He is continuing, like I said, to lead the charge. One of the things that I am very excited about before I yield over is our ABLE accounts. I don't know if enough individuals understand what an ABLE account is, but an ABLE account changes. Now, it doesn't change for the family, but it changes for the individual to have more than $2,000 in their in their name, quote unquote, and it allows them to be able to look up ABLE accounts. The Treasurer Johnson has done an awesome program on this, and in fact, I definitely asked Chairman Beeler to have an informational hearing, and there will be an informational hearing on those, so you can get it streamed from the Capitol. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks because his budget has been passed out, and he's going to talk about it, and then I believe Sarah Hartweir and Witt are going to explain how Witt has been able to use her ABLE account and kind of the function therein. Okay. Never mind. Moving on.
Okay, so we are in year 2 of our biennium. So a lot of the legislation, a lot of the conversations that we're having this year started last year. So I'm jumping in midstream and getting caught up on some of these committees, but I do sit on Welfare Reform Committee. So I think part of this conversation and part of like what Representative Bohi said about moving more and more Kansans off of the wait list is addressing a lot of the fraud. And this is one of the areas where we see the most amount of fraud in the state. So that's been a big part of the conversation we've had so far this year, is looking at what we can do to make sure that this money and these programs are targeting people that actually need it.
Yeah, and I'll build off of that. In the Government Efficiency Committee in the Senate, we spend quite a bit of time on conversations like this. And we also, I think the Senate bill number is 363, which, as written, is probably not workable. It would require quarterly redeterminations, and we know that. I think it's an important conversation starter to say, how do we most appropriately ensure that the programs are reaching the people that are truly eligible, truly need it? But then we also know there's populations like the IDD community that there's no way to not be developmentally disabled for the rest of your life. And so it doesn't really make sense to do quarterly redeterminations for that population. So we need to have some really good thoughtful conversations on that. And it's going to be important that we get really creative and innovative. The wait list issue just boggles my mind how this is an issue, and then we also have these gaps in age determination that a child is at age 5 or age 7, they can't actually be determined to be developmentally disabled. I see someone saying 5 here in the audience, when we know that can certainly be determined for several conditions when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. So there's a lot of questions. I think it's going to take an innovative mindset to come in and try to come up with new solutions. Obviously, how we've been doing it has not been working particularly well, but it's a conversation that's going to continue to be ongoing. We certainly want to hear from people that are involved in these kinds of things to get ideas of how to make them work better and reach the people that need it.
Can I have my 30 seconds? So last year, it's my understanding also when they were working on the number to get off of the wait list, the number was too high for the amount of providers we had. So last year, we did 2 things. We took numbers off the wait list, but then we also increased the reimbursement rate for the providers as well. So just know that we are trying to attack problems from multiple sides. Thank you.
Can anyone explain any reasonable rationale behind the gut and go process, which subverts acceptable legislative process? An advanced practice nursing bill experienced this a few years ago, and it happened again this year. And could you also explain to people what a gut and go means?
I'll try. As a freshman, I'm still learning the gut and go process. So my understanding is that number one, sometimes in the process we can't get things through both sides, right? Like sometimes timing is an issue. And so I think where the process stems from is there's a strong position in one house that has been vetted and it hasn't had the time on the other side. What a gut and go is they take a bill number, I believe, and someone might be able to correct me from the audience, and I apologize because I'm still learning. But they take a bill number and they will remove the contents of that bill and they will put the verbiage from another bill in there. So, for example, we have different things that happen as we get closer to the end. Sometimes it's called a gut and go. Sometimes we bundle bills because, for example, we just passed out over, I believe it's 120 bills from the House to the Senate. They're not going to have time to hear all 120 bills in the next however many weeks we have left in session. And so they will then start to bundle them together if they're like products and then talk about them. So I wasn't there at the APRN thing, and I'm not high enough in the hierarchy to explain or to say, hey, let's put this in this thing. And so I don't really understand all of the nuances of it, but it isn't just something that happens in the state of Kansas. It happens everywhere. I believe it even probably happens up at the federal level. So it is a part of parliamentary procedure that leadership will use when they deem fit.
The gut and go and kind of similar, thinking about budget provisos is that there are tools that exist in the legislative toolbox that, quite frankly, have probably been abused. So kind of like star bonds have maybe sometimes been abused. Gut and goes and budget provisos have maybe been abused. The rationale to use a gut and go would be there is a bill or an issue that has risen to a level of importance, at least in the opinions of the legislature, that it's really important that despite timelines, so on and so forth, that we give this bill an opportunity to be done because it's a priority, right? So that sounds nice. That sounds good. Probably not always appropriately utilized. And, for me, coming into this, gut and goes was something that I don't like. I still don't like. And I think that it's overused. Budget provisos in a similar way. You add language to the budget bill to try to get an agency to do something or craft a piece of policy that you couldn't otherwise get done in a separate bill. As a Republican caucus, we've said we are going to be done with budget provisos. And then, lo and behold, I have no idea how many budget provisos there were in the budget last year, and there's budget provisos in the budget so far this year. So, again, there are tools in the toolbox that can be appropriately deployed but are probably overdone.
Why was legislation necessary for enhanced voter ID when there was only one case of non-citizen voting in Kansas from 1982 to 2025?
Well, Senator Shane hasn't seen it yet. And I voted against it. So I don't have an answer for that right now. Clearly the chair of elections thought it was necessary to send that to the House floor. And there was debate, and I guess that we in the House sometimes, and I probably over on the Senate side too, sometimes debate things that we feel when I say we, it's the royal we, it's like, the majority of the House or the majority of the Senate, and sometimes even in the minorities, feel when there's a topic to discuss. It is a big national topic, right? It is a big national topic. But to the point of the questioner, I don't know. We have very secure elections here in the state of Kansas. I feel like that was proven. And so that's a good question. I'm not certain the answer to that. I'm not in leadership, so I don't get to make the call of what comes above the line, and I don't get to say what gets kicked out of committee.
I think one time is too many times. So I was fine with it. I supported it.
Is this the bill that would require citizenship status to be put on driver's licenses?
I'm assuming that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, so we have one prosecuted case, right? That was in the news very recently. I don't know that we'll have to consider it in the Senate. I'm sure that we will. As Representative Bohi said, sometimes there is legislation that becomes a priority for leadership that's more of a national dialogue issue than it is a really, really big state of Kansas issue. I don't know that we can necessarily quantify what that issue is. Then my next question would be, how big of an effort is it to have a citizenship status on a driver's license? I don't know how big of a lift that is, how cumbersome that really is, but it does provide a simple check for poll workers to be able to confirm, okay, this person's a citizen, they're eligible to vote. The address matches, all the stuff that they normally do. So I think we can kind of sit back and say, okay, is this a reasonable ask, an unreasonable ask? What are the ramifications on elections? But we don't have a whole lot of county clerks around the country and county or around the state, or county attorneys around the state that are looking to prosecute election crimes either. So it's an interesting conversation. We'll look forward to seeing it come over to the Senate. We'll have a healthy debate.
May I don't think I used the full 2. 1 minute. Okay, I don't even need it.
We have a follow-up minute that we allow, so that's what we're giving you.
I would just say also that citizenship on an ID, if we only used our IDs to vote, that might make sense. We don't only use our IDs to vote. So that's also part of the issue that I'm having with this, the bill that was brought before us.
And then I just want to, I see some, it looks like maybe some cards with writing on them. I'm not sure if there's questions. It helps in this tight room if you would just like hold it up so we know when you have one. Somebody can grab them from you. Do you believe that, switching to a question now, do you believe that school boards should retain decision-making authority, or should the state continue issuing mandates, and why?
Well, I think it kind of depends on the scope of the problem. So that's kind of, that's a pretty broad question.
I would say we try to protect local control, but with regards to mental health and students and cell phones, if this question is regarding a cell phone ban, or a bell-to-bell ban, I am strongly in support of not using a cell phone, with the exception of certain medical necessity during school hours. The states that have gone to it have better test scores, have better social outcomes right now, and it's making sense. So in that regard, sometimes the state, behind closed doors, will be asked to be the heavy. This is one of those situations. We've been asked to be the heavy, and I will take that one on the chin because I put the mental health of our students very highly. Thank you.
It's also our power and responsibility as the legislature to set the guardrails for which local control applies. So as an example, one of my bills this year is to mandate recess. Senate Bill 339. I think I got that number correct. We try to keep a lot of numbers in our head. And you know what this bill would do, as it was amended to come out of committee, would not just require 30 minutes of recess K through 5 as the bill was originally introduced. It would actually mandate recess K through 8, which we know that all of the scientific literature available on education says recess should go through 8th grade, in addition to requiring 60 minutes of moderate physical activity during the school day. Recess can count for some of that time. We know that exercise during the day helps with academic focus. We know that it contributes to overall health of our student population, and so we would see, or certainly I would see, that it would be important for us to say as a state, we're going to set these guardrails, and then you as school districts, it's up to you on how you'd like to implement that, what you would like that time to look like. But it's of compelling interest to the state of Kansas to help ensure that our kids are equipped to have a good academic day and also be set up to be healthy adults once they get out of the K through 12 programming. So I view it as, are we setting the guardrails, or are we like dictating a specific behavior? Most of what we do I view as setting the guardrails.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that with applying those guardrails to the cell phone ban. So I was supportive of, as with Representative Bohi, very supportive of the cell phone ban, as it would establish guardrails. And I heard from my local district in Baldwin, they didn't appreciate that impediment on local control, but at the same time, Baldwin already has a policy in place. I believe Gardner does too. And so that the new cell phone ban wouldn't materially change anything for those districts. And a lot of the good districts already do address this. From a state level, my concern is for the districts that don't. And so again, we're helping them and pushing them to be a little bit more proactive in figuring out that policy, because we have a concern for students across the state.
Why does the legislature consistently underfund special education?
So I'll flip that question. I would say, why does the federal government consistently underfund education? This was the program that's a creation of federal law and is supposed to have a federal contribution portion. The federal government has not exceeded 15% contribution, even though their statutory target is 40%. For the last 40 years. And that creates a very, very real challenge for us at the state. At the state level, we continue to increase special education spending year over year over year. Now, we do know that there's some distribution challenges. So there's the 92% of excess cost target that we set. The state has set a goal of trying to chase that over time. We've continued to increase our special education funding, but we also know that we have districts that when they go to transfer funds to the special education fund, they're having to transfer above and beyond what the paper would say that they have to transfer. But we also know we have other districts that appear to get more money in special education funding than on paper what they should have. So we have an allocation challenge. I think we're very serious about trying to understand that and tackle that. But this legislature continues to increase special education funding. We wish that the federal government would put priority on also increasing their contributions there as well, because it matters. One of the things that I was also pleased to see come out of the Senate Education Committee as a budget recommendation was to provide budget enhancements or additional spending for the State School for the Blind and the State School for the Deaf, which are, of course, important special education investments for our state, particularly to help with some of their capital project needs, because those two schools cannot go and hold a bond election the same way that our public K through 12 schools can do. So we're also leaning in and trying to invest in those two very special schools as well.
To further speak to that, we did hear from our governor this year during the State of the State and how special education funding is very, very important to her. However, for the past several years, when she sends out her budget, she doesn't put it in there. We put it in there. The Republicans put it in there. And we continue to increase it year over year. And so we are increasing it again this year. I don't know the final number. I'm not on appropriations, and I don't believe you're on Ways and Means. So, but we will be discussing the budget this coming week. Unfortunately, this is slightly off topic. We haven't gotten a property tax, but we're hearing our property tax bill in the House this week, and then we're also hearing the budget this week over in the House. And so looking very much forward to getting to some of those things. And I think we'll have a better understanding of the special education number after we've discussed the budget, at least on the House side. I'll have a better understanding. Thank you.
So I know this is an important issue, and I understand that it touches so many different families. One of the realities, though, is K-12 budget is 55% of our general fund. And so that is just a real world, that is just a reality that we have to take into consideration when we have 45% of our budget for the rest of the state's needs. And so I don't say that to say that it's not important. It's just, it's a constraint.
How do you plan to address the damages to Kansas pollinator populations due to pesticide ingredients and loss of native plant life?
Fun fact, I'm very crunchy, and we don't use any pesticides in my yard ever, which frustrates people in my household. So I think that some of the different projects that we have in the state of Kansas will continue to hopefully get good publicity. But I think pollinators are huge. And when I drive down in our neighboring state to the south, down in Oklahoma, and I see some of the different pollinator projects they have going along the roadways, I get a little jealous because I feel like we could have some more, but I don't know the funding there. So now I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm for the bees and the butterflies. And yeah, I don't sit on ag and natural resources. I will try to get a better answer for that in the future. Thank you for that question.
On a policy basis, I'm not entirely sure what our options are. I would say, our family has restored more than 50 acres of native tallgrass prairie in eastern Kansas, mixed with, of course, our native tallgrasses and flowers as well. So personally, this is conservation, restoration of native ecosystems, and all this is an important issue to me. Of course, we can continue to do the education things on, hey, if you're a municipality that has a mosquito control program, maybe we avoid those programs during certain times of the year. Maybe we look at if it's KDOT, we try to modify mowing schedules and looking at those kinds of issues. But I think we can try to think creatively. The state of Kansas, this is one of our challenges with the Department of Wildlife and Parks and the Department of Ag when it comes to, I'll say, the conservation programs, is that the Department of Wildlife and Parks is an entirely fee-funded agency. And if you look at the agency as far as what they can contribute towards conservation efforts. It's just less funds that are available compared particularly to Missouri. Now, Missouri has a much larger population and some other things going on, but that's an issue that I'm trying to spend some time on, is how do we think creatively, particularly for the Department of Wildlife and Parks, on how to rethink how we do some revenue generation, try to better fund some conservation programs and efforts. I think that all ties in with the pollinator habitats as well.
I would say Missouri's got a much more established program. I'm trying to think. I think is there a statewide sales tax that supports their conservation department? So yeah, they've got a leg up on us for sure.
And we kind of brushed on this, but I think this question will give you the opportunity to expand on it. Is anything being done for property tax relief for seniors?
So there's two bills, particularly in the Senate, to help try to tackle this issue, at least in maybe some small ways. One is expansion of the current senior program. I'm not going to think, there's actually a couple of them. I'm not thinking of the names off the top of my head, but it would essentially increase the eligibility criteria. There used to be a cap of the home had to be appraised at less than $350,000. Well, good luck finding one of those in Johnson County, right? So we're trying to expand the eligibility so that there'll be more folks eligible to at least participate in that program. And then I also co-sponsored a bill that once you're eligible, your home's appraisal cannot make you ineligible in the future, because we also see that as a very real challenge in Johnson County, where my home was appraised at $290,000 a couple years ago, and now it's $380,000, right? And now I'm not eligible, even though I otherwise was eligible based off of income and other factors. So we have those two bills working in the Senate that will provide some relief. It would not be a property tax freeze or a release from property tax liability like some other states have for seniors, but it would be something small that the Senate has in front of us.
I really think this is something that I really don't like to look at the issue of property tax in the scope of any particular demographic, because as hard as it is for those of you on fixed incomes, I can tell you for the flip side, the families that are just starting out in their career path, it's painful for them too. So I'm excited next week to really dive into this issue, and I really don't want to limit it to the scope of just one demographic for that reason.
I am very aware of the demographics in my district, and I do have a lot of seniors. So as those initiatives come through, we do weigh them very, very seriously. Again, I don't know if there's any in the property tax bill that we're hearing, I believe on Tuesday. Please don't quote me. Could be Wednesday. I do believe we're hearing property tax this week, though. In the property tax bill that we're hearing, I don't think there's any specific carve-outs for seniors. That being said, if it gets past the Senate and we can then debate it over in the House, I look forward to hearing more of the merits of the legislation that Senator Shane referred to.
Kansas is one of 9 states acting as plaintiff in Texas v. Kennedy, a suit that is hoping to strike down Section 504, which allows people with disabilities the right to receive treatment in a community integrated environment. Who will be responsible for providing input for Kansas's revised guidelines, and what role will the legislature have in protecting the rights of people with disabilities? I can repeat. That was a long one.
And I'm definitely going to say I will do homework on that question, because I don't know that I have an answer to that right off the top of my head. So I'd be happy to have a conversation on that.
I'm definitely thankful for the question. I too am not even certain where that lawsuit is in the process. As far as who would be determining that, we would probably also, it's I would imagine a government agency that we have in the state of Kansas. That being said, I do think that the welfare, the child, what is your first committee?
I'm a welfare reform and child welfare reform. But
So yeah, child and seniors, right? So I would imagine
just child. Yeah.
Okay.
Child welfare.
Sorry, guys.
And foster care. That's the
Anyway, I would imagine that's where we would have it, is in those committees to have the informational hearings, or potentially even the government oversight committee that we have on the House side and on the Senate side. I don't know that there's any current legislation in process to pick up with what would happen after that lawsuit. So again, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I think it'd be worth discussing the Supported Decision-Making Act that we passed through. I could talk to that. So I carried the bill that came out of Judiciary. It's would create a new framework and a new role for a supported decision maker that would be almost a step below like a power of attorney. But in Judiciary Committee, we heard from a lot of folks with disabilities that are seeking to establish that type of formal arrangement for someone in their lives to help them and live as independently as they can, but also have a formal framework for someone that can come alongside them, help them with scheduling, help them with their medical decision, help them in medical capacity making decisions, financial decisions to a limited role. So that was something I was really excited about, and I know that's been a couple years in the making with the support of the Banking Association, Judicial Council, and one other. Yeah. So.
When federal funding goes to other states, why have we not accepted federal funds for CanCare?
Comes with strings attached.
I'm going to assume this is a way to try to get at the Medicaid expansion question. The state of Kansas has stood firm for, I think, 10 years now on not expanding Medicaid. And I'm going to speak to some of the very important reasons why. One, vast majority of the states that expanded Medicaid regret doing it because the fiscal note on it is unbelievable. And you end up having a significant percentage of folks that are able-bodied, adults that can work, that are not in the workforce. And that's damaging. There's dignity in work. There's dignity in participating in society in that way. And it also opens up the doors to quite a bit of fraud when you expand the program in such a way, particularly when it's income-based like the Medicaid expansion program is. So I think most folks in the legislature don't believe that men of my age should get a free pass and not have to work. I certainly believe that men my age should have to work when they're capable. And so, the other thing is with Medicaid expansion, one of the things that's not said, it depends on whose numbers you want to believe, but, we could get $300 million, $400 million, $500 million from the federal government by expanding, but we would also obligate ourselves to spend like $500, $600, $700 million out of the state coffers. So it does come with a very real cost. And if you look nationally what's happening, there's a big rollback on Medicaid expansion. Big rollback. So I think actually we were probably ahead of the time and wise by not expanding Medicaid.
So this is questions asking for clarification on something that you guys have alluded to. Why don't we have enough time for bills to make it through the other, if we don't have enough time for bills to make it through the other chamber, why do we seem to keep shortening the legislative session?
Well, wonderful question. This year is the exact same timeline as we had last year. 90 days, 90 calendar days. In the Kansas Constitution, we are to have a 90-day session that has been interpreted differently in the past. I imagine it'll be interpreted differently in the future. Yeah, excellent question. We, in the Kansas Constitution, are supposed to be there for 90 days, whether that's 90 calendar days or 90 days in sum total, meaning like you count Monday as 1 day through Friday as 5 days. You don't count Saturday, Sunday. There's a way to the counting and those sorts of things. And I don't anticipate in the future having it be done in 90 calendar days. I think that potentially future leadership will have a different, more measured approach with that.
I agree with Representative Bohi. I think maybe there's a little bit of a learning curve with this, but I also do believe that your scope of work probably will expand and contract with the time that you have. So I think even if it was expanded, there probably would still feel the same amount of kind of pressure and stress and frenzy, because with more time, you're going to have more bills introduced and more bills discussed. And so I think it's just the nature of the work.
Yeah, and in Kansas, we have a citizens legislature where, vast majority of us have businesses or employment outside of the legislature. We don't have like what I endearingly call the professional legislatures like they have in Massachusetts, where they're where they go all year round. I say it's indicative in Kansas. We're probably just doing more. Our government is doing more things than our founders envisioned, and they envisioned the 90-day legislative session. I agree with the representatives. There's some very real calendar and timeline constraints that come with the 90 days. Some of those same things are still present, even if we were more like 115 days or something like that. The Senate and the House also used to, after turnaround, take a week break to just kind of pause and mentally stretch for a little bit before coming back into it. We don't get that.
I could use a breather.
Yeah, we're back hard at it next week. After coming out of turnaround this week. So I do think moving forward, there's some conversations on how do we more sensibly structure things, because you also want to give good bills the opportunity to make it through the process and not die just due to the timeline constraints.
So we have just a little more time left. It looks like star bonds are still the question that we're getting the most of. So we have, just to pair the two together in maybe 1 minute response, which I know is going to be tough. Is it too late to stop the chief star bonds, and why allow NDAs in the star bond process to impede open meetings?
So none of us were in the legislature with the original star bond expansion bill for professional sports teams that then also created a statutory exemption for these negotiations from the Kansas Open Meetings Act. I don't know that I would have cast that vote back then. I do think that transparency is important, but I also understand, business negotiations, sometimes you want to be able to negotiate through the process and align on things before really coming out and having the finished work product. So do have concerns about the transparency piece. As far as stopping the Chiefs deal, there's not a whole lot outside of somebody trying to introduce a repeal to stop it. Probably the biggest thing, if there was something that puts the Chiefs deal at risk, would be there will be separate legislation required for the creation of a quasi-government sports authority, which would own the stadium. That was a big surprise for a lot of legislators, that now the state is somehow going to be involved with, on paper, owning the stadium. If that bill does not happen, then that will create a $1.5 billion taxable event for the Chiefs, and they're not going to want to do that. So.
Well, and to speak to what Senator Shane just said, as I understand it, again, getting back to that conversation about the stadium authority, there needs to be maybe a little bit more buy-in from the unified government up in Wyandotte County, and I'm not sure what their attitude is right now. So there's conversations to be had.
With regards to star bonds and sports teams and all of that, I will say that it's not like we had a close playbook with what we were trying to do. And other states could also have a star bond initiative. So for our friends across the state line that are frustrated with the Chiefs' decision, you had multiple opportunities. And I hope that you guys put together a good enough package to keep the Royals, because I hear they're looking. So.
We are right at time, and I do have a handful of questions. So I want to encourage you, if your question did not get asked, all of the legislators that are here and every single legislator with constituents in Johnson County, their contact information's on your chair. We encourage you to take that extra step and reach out and clarify your question or follow up if you didn't like something or like something that you heard. And I just also want to mention, I forgot in my opening, we invite everyone. Everyone with constituents in Johnson County is invited. We have 5 across the county. So I just wanted to call that out. And again, thank you to our legislators. Thank you to you. I think we still have coffee and donuts out there, maybe. Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up. So we still have coffee and donuts. So get a refill on your way out. And thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.